In the year 252,023 CE, human soldier Bruce Hunter stood face-to-face with Queen Prylar, the terrifying queen of the Gamelon Empire. Her towering 8-foot frame and iridescent blue skin marked her as distinctly alien, yet Bruce found himself captivated by her piercing silver eyes and the otherworldly beauty they held. This unexpected encounter would soon lead to an unprecedented proposal that could change the fate of both their species. Bruce's journey to this moment began during a routine patrol in the Andromeda sector. As part of an elite human peacekeeping force, he was tasked with maintaining order in this tumultuous region of space. Humanity had spread across the galaxy over the past 250,000 years, encountering numerous alien species along the way. Their adaptability and resilience had become legendary, allowing them to thrive in even the most challenging environments. It was during this patrol that Bruce's ship detected an anomalous energy signature emanating from an uncharted planet. Upon investigation, he and his team discovered an ancient Gamelon outpost, long abandoned but still operational. As they explored the facility, their curiosity got the better of them. They inadvertently activated a dormant distress beacon, alerting the nearby Gamelon Empire to their presence. Within hours, a massive Gamelon warship arrived in orbit, its imposing silhouette blotting out the stars. Commanded by Queen Prylar herself, the ship's presence sent shockwaves through the human team. Known throughout the galaxy for her ruthless tactics and fearsome reputation, Prylar demanded immediate surrender from the humans. Recognizing the potential for diplomatic disaster, Bruce volunteered to board the Gamelon ship as an envoy. As he was escorted to the bridge, the enormity of the situation weighed heavily on his shoulders. The fate of human Gamelon relations hung in the balance, and one wrong move could spark an interstellar conflict. To Bruce's surprise, Queen Prylar didn't immediately order his execution upon his arrival on the bridge. Instead, she expressed a deep curiosity about humans and their ways. The Gamelons, she revealed, had long been fascinated by human resilience and adaptability, particularly in matters of reproduction. Prylar's next words stunned Bruce. She explained that Gamelon birth rates had been declining for centuries, threatening the very survival of their species. In a move that would have been unthinkable just hours before, she proposed an unprecedented arrangement. In exchange for sharing human knowledge of mating and reproduction, the Gamelons would form an alliance with humanity, offering advanced technology and military support. The implications of this proposal were enormous. Bruce's mind raced as he considered the potential benefits and risks of such an alliance. The exchange of knowledge and technology could propel both species forward, but the cultural and biological challenges were daunting. Cautiously, Bruce agreed to consider the proposal. He knew he would need to consult with his superiors before making any commitments. As he prepared to return to his ship, however, fate intervened in the form of a rogue faction of Gamelon extremists. Without warning, the extremists launched a coordinated attack on both the human and Gamelon vessels. Their goal was clear: prevent any alliance between the two species at all costs. Chaos erupted as both ships came under fire, their shields straining against the onslaught. In the midst of the attack, Bruce found himself trapped aboard the Gamelon warship with Queen Prylar. The human soldier and the alien queen were forced into an unlikely partnership, working together to survive the onslaught and prevent an all-out interstellar war. As alarms blared and the ship shuddered under enemy fire, Bruce realized that the future of both their species now rested in their hands. The next few hours would determine not only their fate, but potentially the course of galactic history. With determination in his eyes, he turned to Queen Prylar, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The ship lurched violently, throwing Bruce and Queen Prylar off balance. Alarms blared throughout the vessel as the rogue Gamelon faction's attack intensified. Bruce instinctively reached out to steady the towering alien queen, his hand barely wrapping around her muscular blue arm. "We need to move," he shouted over the cacophony of explosions and warning klaxons. "This bridge is a death trap." Prylar nodded, her silver eyes narrowing as she assessed their options. "Follow me," she commanded, leading Bruce through a concealed door behind her ornate command chair. They sprinted down a dimly lit corridor, the sounds of battle growing more distant with each step. Bruce's mind raced, trying to process the sudden turn of events. Just moments ago, He had been contemplating an unprecedented alliance between humans and gamelons. Now he found himself fleeing alongside their queen as her own people tried to kill them both. The corridor ended at a heavy door, which Prylar swiftly unlocked with a complex series of hand gestures on a nearby panel. As the door slid open, Bruce realized they had entered a private chamber adjacent to the queen's quarters. "We should be safe here for now," Prylar said, her voice tinged with a mix of anger and concern. "This area is shielded and off the main ship schematics." Bruce surveyed the room, noting its blend of alien aesthetics and practical amenities. "Your Majesty, what exactly is going on? Who are these attackers?" Prylar's face darkened. "They are led by Commander Zax, a hardline traditionalist within our military. He and his followers have long opposed any form of cooperation with other species, especially humans." As they caught their breath, Prylar moved to a computer terminal and began rapidly inputting commands. Bruce watched in fascination as alien symbols flashed across the screen. "It's worse than I feared," she muttered. "Zax has taken control of the ship's main systems. He's killing both human and loyal Gamelon crew members." Bruce felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "We need to stop him. Can we contact my ship or your loyalist?" Prylar shook her head. "Communications are jammed. We're on our own." As they began to formulate a plan, Prylar's expression softened. She turned to Bruce, her towering frame seeming to shrink as vulnerability crept into her voice. "There's something you need to understand, Bruce. The reason for my proposal, for this entire mission, our species is dying." Bruce listened intently as Prylar explained the Gamelon reproductive crisis. The Queen's voice trembled as she described the genetic degradation that threatened her entire civilization. "That's why we need humans," she concluded. "Your genetic diversity, your adaptability, it could be the key to our survival." Bruce's mind reeled at the implications. He opened his mouth to respond, but an explosion rocked the ship, cutting him off. "We're out of time," Prylar said, her regal demeanor returning. "We need to reach the secondary command center. It's our only chance to regain control of the ship." Together, they scoured the Queen's quarters for materials to create makeshift weapons and armor. Bruce marveled at the advanced Gamelon technology as Prylar fashioned energy weapons from what looked like decorative wall ornaments. "Take this," Prylar said, handing Bruce a small metallic disc. "It's a neural interface. It will give you limited access to our systems and enhance your physical capabilities." Bruce hesitated for a moment before placing the disc on his temple. A surge of information flooded his mind as the interface activated, accompanied by a tingling sensation throughout his body. As they prepared to leave their sanctuary, Bruce turned to Prylar. "If we make it through this, I'll do everything in my power to help find a solution to your people's crisis." Prylar nodded solemnly. "Then let us hope we both survive to see that day." They approached the chamber's exit, tension mounting as they prepared to face whatever lay beyond. Bruce activated the door controls, and it slid open to reveal a squad of Zax's followers guarding the corridor. Time seemed to slow as Bruce's enhanced senses processed the scene. He could see the minute shifts in the guards' postures, hear the quiet hum of their energy weapons charging. Without hesitation, Bruce sprang into action. He launched himself at the nearest guard, using his newly enhanced strength to disarm the surprised Gamelon. In his peripheral vision, he saw Prylar moving with inhuman speed and grace, easily overpowering two guards at once. The fight was intense but brief. Bruce's combat training, combined with his enhanced abilities, proved a formidable match for the Gamelon soldiers. However, he quickly realized that raw strength alone wasn't enough against their superior biology. As he grappled with one guard, he saw another taking aim at Prylar's exposed back. Without thinking, Bruce threw himself into the line of fire, using his makeshift armor to absorb the energy blast. The impact sent him sprawling, but he had succeeded in protecting the Queen. Prylar finished off the remaining guards with a display of power that left Bruce in awe. As the last attacker fell, she rushed to Bruce's side, concern etched on her alien features. "Are you injured?" she asked, helping him to his feet. Bruce winced but shook his head. "Nothing serious, but remind me not to take a direct hit from those weapons again." A look of respect passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the trust that was forming in the heat of battle. As they caught their breath, they could hear the distant sound of weapons fire and shouting. The ship's internal communications system crackled to life, and Commander Zax's voice filled the corridor. "Attention all Gamelon citizens," Zax's voice boomed. "The humans have launched an unprovoked attack on our vessel. Their treachery knows no bounds. We must unite to eliminate this threat to our very existence." Bruce and Pryler exchanged grim looks. "He's trying to start a war," Bruce said. "Then we must move quickly," Pryler replied. "The secondary command center is 3 levels down. We'll need to use the maintenance shafts to avoid detection." As they moved towards a hidden access panel, Bruce's enhanced hearing picked up a fragment of another transmission. "Gamelon homeworld. Humans are a threat." The stakes of their mission suddenly became clear. It wasn't just about saving the ship anymore. They needed to prevent an interstellar war. Bruce and Pryler entered the narrow maintenance shaft, the sounds of conflict echoing through the ship's superstructure. As they began their perilous journey to the secondary command center, both human and Gamelon knew that the fate of their species hung in the balance. The ship shuddered from another impact, and Bruce steadied himself against the wall of the shaft. He looked at Pryler, her dedication mirroring his own. Without a word, they pressed on, each step bringing them closer to their goal, and to an uncertain future that would reshape the galaxy. Relationship between humans and Gamelons. As they descended through the maintenance shaft, the ship's tremors grew more violent. Bruce's enhanced senses picked up the sound of footsteps approaching rapidly from above. "We've got company," he whispered to Pryler. The Queen nodded, her silver eyes scanning the dim passage. "This way," she hissed, gesturing towards a narrow side duct. They squeezed into the cramped space just as a group of armed Gamelons rushed past their previous position. Bruce held his breath, acutely aware of how close they'd come to discovery. Once the danger had passed, Pryler led them through a maze of winding shafts until they reached a seldom-used maintenance bay. As the door slid open, Bruce's eyes widened at the sight of a sleek, compact vessel, unlike any he'd seen before. "An experimental stealth shuttle," Pryler explained, moving swiftly towards the craft. "It might be our best chance to reach the secondary command center undetected." As they approached the shuttle, the bay doors suddenly hissed open. Bruce spun around, weapon raised, only to find himself face to face with a group of Gamelons led by a female officer. "My queen," the officer exclaimed, dropping to one knee. "I am Lieutenant Vera. We've been searching for you." Pryler's posture relaxed slightly. "Rise, Lieutenant. Explain your presence here." Vera stood, her gaze flickering between Pryler and Bruce. "We remain loyal to you, Your Majesty. We've come to offer our assistance in retaking the ship." Bruce lowered his weapon, sensing an opportunity. "How many of you are there?" "A dozen, sir," Vera replied. "We've managed to evade Zax's forces, but our options are limited." Pryler nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Your loyalty is appreciated, Lieutenant. Your knowledge of the ship's systems may prove invaluable." As the group worked to prepare the stealth shuttle, Pryler moved closer to Bruce. Her towering form cast a shadow over him as she spoke in a low voice. "Human, I find myself curious about your species' reproductive practices," she said, her silver eyes intense. "How do your kind form emotional bonds during mating?" Bruce felt heat rise to his cheeks, caught off guard by the directness of her question. "Well, it's complicated," he stammered. "Humans generally form emotional connections before physical ones. Love, trust, mutual respect. These are important factors." Pryler's brow furrowed. "Fascinating. And these emotions, they enhance the reproductive process?" "In a way, yes," Bruce replied, trying to focus on the shuttle's pre-flight checklist. "But maybe we should discuss this later. We've got a mission to complete." The Queen nodded, seemingly satisfied for the moment. "Indeed, let us proceed." With the shuttle prepped, the group boarded and activated its cloaking technology. Bruce marveled at the sophistication of the Gamelon stealth systems as they glided silently through the ship's cavernous interior. Their progress was smooth until they approached the secondary command center. Suddenly, the shuttle's sensors blared a warning. "Energy barrier detected," Lieutenant Vera announced, her fingers flying over the control panel. "It's a new security measure. We can't penetrate it from here." Pryler's expression darkened. "Zax's work, no doubt. Can it be deactivated?" Vera nodded. "Yes, but only from the main engineering terminal. It's heavily guarded." Bruce studied the ship's schematic on a nearby screen. "We'll need to split up," he said. "I can lead a team to engineering while you create a diversion, Your Majesty." Pryler considered the plan for a moment before agreeing. As they prepared to part ways, she approached Bruce, her expression solemn. "There is a Gamelon gesture of trust I wish to share with you," she said softly. Before Bruce could react, she leaned down and pressed her forehead against his. A jolt of electricity seemed to pass between them. In that brief moment, Bruce caught glimpses of alien thoughts and emotions, the weight of leadership, the fear of extinction, and a glimmer of hope for the future. As they separated, Bruce felt a newfound connection to the Gamelon Queen. "We'll succeed," he said firmly. "I promise." With Lieutenant Vera and half of the loyal Gamelons at his side, Bruce made his way towards the engineering section. They moved swiftly through the ship's corridors, using their knowledge of Gamelon tactics to avoid patrols. As they neared their destination, the sounds of weapons fire erupted from a distant part of the ship. Queen Pryler's diversion was underway. Bruce's team encountered heavy resistance as they entered engineering. The human soldiers' unconventional combat style caught Zax's forces off guard, allowing them to gain ground. In the heat of battle, Lieutenant Vera spotted a Gamelon rebel taking aim at Bruce from behind. Without hesitation, she threw herself into the line of fire, taking the blast meant for him. Bruce spun around, dispatching the attacker with a well-placed shot. He rushed to Vera's side, relieved to find her wounded, but alive. "Why?" he asked as he helped her to cover. Vera grimaced through the pain. "Because I believe in what we're fighting for. Human and Gamelon, working together." As Bruce's team pushed forward, Queen Pryler's voice suddenly filled the ship's communication channels. "People of Gamilo," she began, her tone regal and commanding, "you have been deceived. Commander Zax does not act in the interest of our people, but out of fear and ignorance. The humans are not our enemies. They may be our salvation." Her words seemed to have an immediate effect. Confusion spread through the rebel ranks, with some lowering their weapons in uncertainty. Taking advantage of the chaos, Bruce fought his way to the main terminal. As he reached for the controls, a powerful blow sent him sprawling across the floor. Commander Zax loomed over him, eyes blazing with fury. "You dare to corrupt our people with your human filth?" he snarled. Bruce rolled to his feet, settling into a fighting stance. "Your people were dying long before we arrived," he shot back. "We're offering a chance at survival." Zax lunged forward, his Gamelon strength threatening to overwhelm Bruce. The human soldier dodged and weaved, relying on his agility and enhanced reflexes to stay just out of reach. As the fight wore on, Bruce realized he couldn't match Zax's raw power. Instead, he focused on looking for weaknesses, any vulnerability he could exploit. In a moment of inspiration, Bruce recalled his basic training in human pressure points. He wondered if similar principles might apply to Gamelon physiology. Taking a calculated risk, Bruce allowed Zax to grab him. As the Gamelon commander prepared to deliver a crushing blow, Bruce struck precisely at a cluster of nerves near Zax's neck. The effect was immediate. Zax's eyes widened in shock as his body went rigid, then collapsed to the floor. Breathing heavily, Bruce staggered to the terminal and deactivated the energy barrier. "We did it," he panted into his communicator. "The way to the secondary command center is clear." As Bruce and his team secured Zax and prepared to rendezvous with Queen Pryler, a new alarm began to blare throughout the ship. Lieutenant Vera, leaning heavily on another Gamelon for support, paled at the sound. "The main reactor," she gasped. "It's going critical." Bruce's heart sank as he realized their troubles were nowhere near the end. With the reactor threatening to destroy both ships and Gamelon reinforcements on the way, the true test of their newfound alliance was about to begin. With the reactor threatening to destroy both ships and Gamelon reinforcements on the way, the true test of their newfound alliance was about to unfold. Bruce's mind raced as he assessed the situation. "We need to get to the secondary command center now," he said urgently to Lieutenant Vera. "Can you handle things here?" Vera nodded, her face etched with willpower despite her injury. "Go! We'll do what we can to stabilize the reactor." Bruce and his team sprinted through the corridors, meeting up with Queen Prylar and her forces near the entrance to the command center. As they approached the main control panel, a new obstacle revealed itself. "It's locked down," Prylar said, her silver eyes narrowing as she studied the complex security interface. "Zax must have implemented an additional failsafe." Bruce leaned in, examining the alien technology. "It looks like it requires two types of authorization," he observed. "Gamelon and human?" Prylar's antenna twitched in surprise. "You're correct. It needs my royal authorization and a human biometric signature. Zax must have anticipated this scenario." "Then let's give it what it wants," Bruce said, stepping up to the console. As they positioned themselves in front of the interface, Prylar explained the process. "We'll need to synchronize our brainwaves using our neural link technology. It's intimate by Gamelon standards." Bruce swallowed hard, suddenly aware of the alienness of the situation. "I'm ready if you are, Your Majesty." Prylar placed a neural interface device on Bruce's temple, then connected herself to the system. "Prepare yourself, human. This will be unlike anything you've experienced before." As the connection initialized, Bruce felt a rush of sensation flood his mind. Colors he'd never seen before danced across his vision, and alien thoughts brushed against his consciousness. He gasped, overwhelmed by the intensity of the experience. Prylar's voice echoed in his mind, guiding him through the process. "Focus, Bruce. Let our minds align." Bruce concentrated, allowing his thoughts to intertwine with Prylar's. Suddenly, he was awash in her memories, the weight of leadership, the fear for her people's future, and the hope that this alliance might save them all. In turn, Prylar experienced a flood of human experiences. She saw Earth's diverse ecosystems, felt the warmth of human relationships, and understood the complex tapestry of emotions that drove Bruce's species. As their minds synchronized, the security system recognized their combined signature. The lockdown lifted, granting them full access to the ship's systems. Bruce blinked, coming back to himself as the neural link disengaged. He looked at Prylar, seeing her in a new light. "That was extraordinary," Prylar finished, her eyes wide with wonder. "Your species is far more complex than I had imagined." Before they could discuss the experience further, Lieutenant Vera's voice crackled over the comm system. "My queen, we've managed to stabilize the reactor, but we have another problem. The Gamelon fleet is approaching, and they're not responding to our hails." Bruce and Prylar exchanged a look, a new understanding passing between them. Without a word, they both knew what needed to be done. "We need to broadcast the truth about Zax's treachery," Bruce said, moving to the communication terminal. Prylar nodded, joining him at the controls. "And we must present a united front, a joint human Gamelon message of peace." As they worked to compile the evidence and craft their message, Bruce noticed something strange. He could sense Prylar's thoughts, even though they were no longer connected by the neural interface. "Your Majesty," he said hesitantly, "I think I can hear your thoughts." Prylar's antennae twitched in surprise. "As can I yours. It seems the neural link has had some unexpected consequences." They quickly realized the potential advantage this telepathic connection could provide. Working in perfect synchronization, they prepared their broadcast to the approaching fleet. As the message went out, they watched the sensor readings anxiously. Most of the fleet slowed its approach, but a few ships continued on their attack vector. "They're not all convinced," Bruce observed grimly. Prylar's expression hardened with dedication. "Then we must take more direct action. I will board the lead ship and negotiate in person." "Not alone, you won't," Bruce said firmly. "I'm coming with you as the human liaison." As they prepared to depart, Bruce couldn't help but notice subtle changes in Prylar's behavior. Her gaze lingered on him longer than necessary, and she seemed to find reasons to initiate physical contact, A brush of the arm here, a touch on the shoulder there. Bruce felt a mix of intrigue and concern. The diplomatic implications of this development were not lost on him, but he pushed those thoughts aside for now. They had a more immediate crisis to address. They left Lieutenant Vera in charge of the warship, with Commander Zax and his loyalists secured in the brig. As Bruce and Pryler boarded the diplomatic shuttle, their minds still linked, the weight of their mission settled over them. The shuttle glided smoothly towards the lead ship of the Gamelon fleet. Through their mental connection, Bruce could sense Pryler's tenacity mingled with apprehension. "Admiral Koth commands that vessel," Pryler communicated silently. "He's a traditionalist, skeptical of other species. This won't be easy." Bruce sent back a wave of reassurance. "We've come this far. Whatever happens, we face it together." As their shuttle docked with Admiral Koth's ship, Bruce and Pryler steeled themselves for the challenge ahead. The airlock hissed open, revealing a contingent of armed Gamelon guards, their weapons trained on the unlikely pair. Bruce and Pryler stepped forward, side by side, ready to fight for peace with words rather than weapons. The fate of both their species hung in the balance as they prepared to confront Admiral Koth and attempt to forge a new future for humans and Gamelons alike. As the airlock doors slid open, Bruce and Queen Pryler stepped into Admiral Koth's command chamber. The room bristled with tension, armed Gamelon guards lining the walls with weapons at the ready. At the center stood Admiral Koth himself, a towering figure with deep green skin and piercing yellow eyes that locked onto Bruce with immediate suspicion. "Explain this human's presence on a Gamelon vessel," Koth demanded, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the floor. Queen Pryler raised her chin, her antennae twitching slightly as she asserted her royal authority. "Admiral Koth, what I am about to share will challenge everything you believe about our current situation." She launched into a detailed account of the events aboard her ship, her voice steady and commanding. As she spoke, holographic displays flickered to life around them, showing video footage of Zax's rebellion and the subsequent alliance with Bruce and the humans. Bruce watched the Admiral's face carefully, noting the subtle shifts in his expression as he absorbed the information. When Pryler finished, Bruce stepped forward, feeling the weight of every Gamelon eye in the room upon him. "Admiral," he began, his military training evident in his posture and tone, "if I may, I'd like to provide a tactical analysis of Commander Zax's actions and their potential consequences." Koth's eyes narrowed, but he gave a curt nod. Bruce proceeded to break down Zax's strategy, highlighting how it could have sparked an unnecessary war between their species. He illustrated his points using the holographic displays, manipulating the Gamelon technology with a familiarity that seemed to surprise the onlooking officers. As Bruce concluded his analysis, he noticed a shift in Koth's demeanor. The Admiral's rigid posture had softened slightly, his eyes now holding a glimmer of grudging respect. Before Koth could respond, an urgent message crackled through the room's communication system. Lieutenant Vera's voice, strained with almost unchecked panic, filled the air. "My queen, the reactor. It's destabilizing again. Zax's sabotage was more extensive than we thought. We're losing control." The room erupted into a flurry of activity as Koth barked orders to his crew. Bruce's mind raced, quickly assessing their options. In a flash of inspiration, he turned to Koth. "Admiral, we need to use your fleet for an emergency reactor extraction," Bruce proposed, his voice cutting through the chaos. "It's risky, but it's our best chance to prevent a catastrophe that could affect both our species." Koth hesitated for a moment, his yellow eyes boring into Bruce. Then with a sharp nod, he made his decision. "Very well, human, we will cooperate, but know that if this is a trick, the consequences will be severe." As Koth's fleet moved into position around Queen Prylar's damaged vessel, Bruce found himself working alongside Gamelon engineers, adapting their technology to human emergency protocols. The language barrier dissolved in the face of their shared technical knowledge, with Bruce's quick thinking and adaptability earning nods of approval from his Gamelon counterparts. Throughout the preparations, Bruce noticed Queen Prylar observing him intently. During a brief lull in activity, she approached him, her silver eyes alight with curiosity. "Bruce," she said softly, her antennae quivering slightly, "I've been watching your interactions with my people. Tell me, in human society, how do concepts like loyalty and cooperation factor into your mating selections? Caught off guard by the question, Bruce blinked in surprise. Well, Your Majesty, those traits are generally considered desirable in a partner, but perhaps we should focus on the task at hand? Prylar nodded, but Bruce could sense her fascination hadn't diminished. Before she could inquire further, alarms blared throughout the ship, signaling the start of the reactor extraction. Bruce and Prylar returned to her vessel, taking command of the operation. As they entered the control room, the ship shuddered violently, the unstable reactor threatening to tear itself apart at any moment. Gravitational tethers are fluctuating, a Gamelon technician called out, panic edging into his voice. Bruce leapt into action, his fingers flying over the alien controls. Reroute power from the auxiliary systems, he ordered. We need to stabilize the tethers before we can begin the extraction. As the operation progressed, complications arose at every turn. The reactor's instability created electromagnetic pulses that interfered with their equipment, forcing Bruce to improvise solutions on the fly. He coordinated with the Gamelon crew seamlessly, his adaptive strategies and quick thinking, drawing looks of admiration from both the crew and Queen Prylar. After a tense hour of delicate maneuvering, the reactor was finally jettisoned to a safe distance. A collective sigh of relief swept through the control room, but it was short-lived. New alarms began to blare, and the ship's atmosphere noticeably thickened. Life support systems are failing, Prylar announced, her voice tight with concern. The reactor extraction must have caused more damage than we anticipated. Bruce's training kicked in immediately. We need to evacuate, he said, already moving toward the door. Your Majesty, we'll need to coordinate with Admiral Koth's fleet to receive the refugees. As they rushed through the corridors, Bruce and Prylar worked in perfect synchronization, their telepathic link allowing them to communicate instantly and efficiently. They directed crew members to escape pods and shuttles, ensuring the most vulnerable were evacuated first. The ship groaned around them, the hull stressed to its limits. As they helped a group of injured Gamelons to safety, a thunderous crack echoed through the corridor. Bruce's eyes widened as he saw a section of the hull begin to buckle. Everyone, move, he shouted, pushing the last of the group through the airlock. As the hull gave way, Bruce lunged for the emergency containment controls, his fingers flying over the panel. Queen Prylar watched in astonishment as Bruce manually sealed the breach, his body straining against the escaping atmosphere. As the containment field snapped into place, Bruce stumbled back, gasping for breath. Why? Prylar asked, her voice filled with wonder. Why risk your life for those you barely know? Bruce met her gaze, his eyes filled with drive. Because every life is worth saving, Your Majesty, human or Gamelon. As they continued their frantic evacuation efforts, the ship's systems failed one by one. Bruce and Prylar found themselves cut off from the remaining escape routes, trapped in a rapidly decompressing section of the ship. We need to fashion pressure suits, Bruce said, scanning the room for usable materials. It's our only chance to reach the last escape pod. Working together, they cobbled together makeshift suits from emergency supplies and salvaged equipment. As they prepared to venture into the toxic atmosphere, Bruce noticed a tear in his suit's material. Your Majesty, he said gravely, my suit is compromised. You should go on without me. Prylar's eyes widened, her antennae flattening against her head. Without hesitation, she reached for her suit's oxygen supply, connecting it to Bruce's. We go together, she said firmly, her actions mirroring the selflessness she had witnessed in Bruce. As they made their way through the collapsing ship, Bruce felt a newfound respect for the Gamelon Queen. Her dedication and adaptability in the face of danger rivaled any human he had ever known. They reached the escape pod just as the ship began its final death throes. As the pod launched into the void of space, Bruce and Prylar found themselves pressed close together in the cramped interior, their survival now dependent on their mutual trust and cooperation. In the silence of space, as they waited for rescue, Prylar turned to Bruce, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight that streamed through the pod's small window. Bruce, she said softly, her voice filled with a mix of curiosity and something deeper. I find myself intrigued by human behavior, by your behavior, specifically. Before Bruce could respond, a bright light flooded the pod's interior. A Gamelon shuttle had arrived to rescue them, marking the end of their immediate peril but the beginning of a new, uncharted territory in human-Gamelon relations. As they were brought aboard the shuttle, Bruce and Prylar exchanged a long look, both aware that their shared ordeal had forged a connection that neither fully understood yet. The future of their species hung in the balance, with the potential for a new era of cooperation, or a return to age-old hostilities, resting squarely on their shoulders. As the shuttle docked with Admiral Koth's flagship, Bruce and Queen Prylar exchanged a meaningful glance, both acutely aware of the weight of their shared experiences. The airlock hissed open, revealing a reception party led by Admiral Koth himself. His imposing figure filled the doorway, yellow eyes scanning Bruce and Prylar with newfound interest. "Your Majesty," Koth rumbled, inclining his head slightly. "And, Bruce, your actions today have given us much to consider." Bruce stood at attention, acutely aware of the scrutiny from the Gamelon officers flanking Koth. "Thank you, Admiral. We're grateful for your fleet's assistance in averting disaster." Koth nodded, his expression unreadable. "Indeed. It seems we have much to discuss regarding the future of our interactions." As they were escorted through the sleek corridors of the Gamelon flagship, Bruce noticed Queen Prylar keeping unusually close to him. Her antennae twitched periodically, betraying her nervousness despite her regal composure. "Admiral Koth," Prylar spoke up, her voice carrying the authority of her station, "I request that Bruce act as my personal advisor during our stay aboard your vessel." Koth's brow furrowed, his yellow eyes narrowing. "An unusual request, Your Majesty. Surely one of our own." "Bruce's insights were invaluable during the crisis," Prylar interrupted, her tone brooking no argument. "His presence will be essential as we navigate these delicate diplomatic waters." After a moment's hesitation, Koth acquiesced with a curt nod. "As you wish, Your Majesty." As they were shown to their quarters, Bruce couldn't help but notice the sideways glances and hushed whispers from the Gamelon crew. Their presence was clearly unprecedented, a human and a Gamelon queen working in such close proximity. Over the next few days, as preparations for the formal diplomatic talks got underway, Bruce found himself spending increasing amounts of time with Queen Prylar. Her curiosity about human customs seemed insatiable, her questions growing more personal with each passing hour. "Bruce," Prylar asked as they reviewed diplomatic protocols in her quarters, "in human mating rituals, how does one typically express interest in a potential partner?" Bruce nearly choked on his drink, caught off guard by the directness of her query. "Well, Your Majesty," he began, trying to maintain a professional demeanor, "it varies greatly between individuals and cultures. Generally, humans might engage in activities together, share meals, or simply spend time talking to gauge compatibility." Prylar's antennae perked up with interest. "Fascinating. And physical contact? Is that a component of human courtship?" Before Bruce could formulate a response, a chime signaled the arrival of Admiral Sarah Clark, the lead human diplomat. Grateful for the interruption, Bruce composed himself as the door slid open. Admiral Clark strode in, her presence commanding despite her small stature compared to the Gamelons. "Your Majesty, Bruce," she greeted them with a nod. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." "Not at all, Admiral," Bruce replied, perhaps a bit too quickly. "We were just reviewing some cultural differences in a preparation for the talks." Clark raised an eyebrow but didn't comment further. "Excellent. I wanted to discuss our proposal for a cultural exchange program. We believe it could be the key to fostering better understanding between our species." As they delved into the details of the proposal, Bruce couldn't help but notice Queen Prylar's gaze lingering on him. Her silver eyes seemed to hold a myriad of unasked questions, adding an undercurrent of tension to the already charged atmosphere. The following day, as the diplomatic talks commenced in earnest, Bruce found himself seated beside Queen Prylar, facing a panel of human and Gamelon officials. Admiral Koth presided over the proceedings, his imposing presence a reminder of the delicate nature of their negotiations. Admiral Clark presented the human proposal with eloquence, emphasizing the potential benefits of cultural exchange. By learning from each other, we can bridge the gap between our species and build a foundation for lasting peace, she concluded. The Gamelon delegation listened intently, their expressions guarded. When it was their turn to speak, they countered with a proposal for limited scientific cooperation, focusing primarily on genetic research. Our species faces a reproductive crisis, the Gamelon science minister explained, his voice tinged with urgency. We believe human genetic diversity may hold the key to our survival. As the talks progressed, Bruce observed the interplay of hope and suspicion on both sides. The weight of history and prejudice hung heavy in the air, threatening to derail the fragile progress they had made. During a recess, Queen Pryler suggested they take a walk through the ship's biodome. As they entered the lush, Earth-like environment, Bruce marveled at the attention to detail. Alien flora mimicked terrestrial plants, creating an uncanny blend of the familiar and the exotic. "It's beautiful," Bruce murmured, brushing his hand against a leaf that seemed to pulse with bioluminescence. Pryler nodded, her antennae swaying gently in the artificial breeze. "We created this space to study Earth's ecosystems," she explained. "Now it serves as a reminder of what we stand to gain through cooperation." As they strolled along a winding path, Pryler's demeanor changed. Her regal facade slipped, revealing a vulnerability Bruce hadn't seen before. "Bruce," she said softly, "I fear for my people. Our numbers dwindle with each passing generation. The pressure to find a solution—" She trailed off, her silver eyes clouding with emotion. Bruce felt an unexpected surge of empathy. He reached out, hesitating for a moment before placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Your Majesty, I can't imagine the weight you carry, but what I've seen of your people, your resilience, your adaptability, gives me hope. Together, I believe we can find a way forward." Pryler looked at him, her eyes shimmering with an intensity that made Bruce's breath catch. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibility. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship, shattering the tranquil atmosphere of the biodome. Bruce's military instincts kicked in immediately, his body tensing for action. "What's happening?" he asked, already moving towards the exit. Pryler's face had hardened into a mask of dedication. "We're under attack," she said grimly. "From within." As they raced through the corridors towards the command center, the ship shuddered around them. The sounds of weapons fire and shouting echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. They rounded a corner to find Admiral Koth barking orders to a group of loyal officers. His eyes widened slightly at their approach. "Your Majesty, you shouldn't be here," he growled. "It's not safe. Zax's loyalists have taken control of the weapon systems. They're demanding we abandon all cooperation with the humans, or they'll destroy your delegation." Bruce's mind raced, assessing the situation. "Admiral," he said, stepping forward, "I have an idea, but it's going to require trust. From all of us." Koth's yellow eyes bored into Bruce, weighing the human's words. After a tense moment, he nodded. "Speak quickly, human. We don't have much time." As Bruce outlined his plan, combining human stealth tactics with Gamelon technology, he noticed Queen Pryler watching him intently. Her expression was a mix of admiration and something deeper, more complex. "I'll need to be part of the strike team," Bruce concluded, bracing for objections. To his surprise, it was Pryler who spoke first. "Then I'm coming too," she declared, her voice leaving no room for argument. Koth bristled. "Your Majesty, I must protest. The risk—" "Is necessary," Pryler cut him off. "This is about more than just our immediate safety. It's about the future of both our species. I will not cower while others fight for that future." Bruce met her gaze, seeing the steel in her silver eyes. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement of her courage. "We'll need to move fast," he said, turning back to Koth. "And I'll need to teach Queen Pryler some basic human combat techniques." As they prepared for the counterattack, Bruce found himself in the surreal position of instructing the Gamelon Queen in hand-to-hand combat. Her natural strength and agility made her a quick study, but the close physical contact required for the training added a new layer of tension to their already complex relationship. "Like this?" Pryler asked, executing a takedown move Bruce had just demonstrated. her body pressed against his as she pinned him to the floor, her face inches from his own. "Perfect," Bruce managed, acutely aware of every point of contact between them. "You're a natural." As they disentangled themselves, Bruce caught a flicker of something in Pryler's eyes, a heat that had nothing to do with the exertion of their training. Before he could process it, Koth entered the room, signaling that it was time to move. The Joint Strike Team assembled, a mix of loyal Gamelon warriors and armed human delegates. Bruce surveyed the group, noting the grit on every face, human and Gamelon alike. Whatever their differences, they were united in purpose. "Remember," Bruce addressed the team, "we're facing our own people out there. Our goal is to retake control with minimal casualties. Use stunning force whenever possible." With a nod from Koth, they moved out, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in their fight to secure a future of cooperation between their species. Species. As the strike team advanced through the corridors, Bruce's mind raced with the implications of their current predicament. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger challenge. The team successfully neutralized the insurgents and regained control of the ship's systems, but the incident had shaken both human and Gamelon delegates to their core. In the days that followed, tensions ran high as both sides reassessed their positions on the proposed alliance. It was during one of these tense meetings that Queen Pryler made an announcement that would change everything. "I have a proposal," she declared, her silver eyes sweeping across the room. "To cement our alliance and demonstrate our commitment to a shared future, I propose a diplomatic marriage between myself and Bruce." The room erupted into chaos. Human officials exchanged shocked glances while Gamelon delegates burst into heated discussions. Bruce felt as if the floor had dropped out from beneath him, his mind struggling to process the Queen's words. Admiral Sarah Clark was the first to recover. "Your Majesty," she began, her voice tight with awe-inspiring alarm, "while we appreciate the gesture, such a union raises significant security concerns. Bruce's potential access to Gamelon royal authority could compromise Earth's interest." High Counselor Zorn, a senior Gamelon official, stood abruptly. "This is preposterous," he thundered. "Your Majesty, your fascination with human culture has clearly clouded your judgment. We cannot allow our royal bloodline to be diluted by human DNA." Queen Pryler remained unshaken by the outburst. "I understand your concerns," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But I believe this union is necessary to forge a lasting peace between our species. Dr. Alara," she gestured to a Gamelon scientist, "will begin preliminary studies on human Gamelon biological compatibility immediately." Bruce felt all eyes in the room turn to him. He swallowed hard, acutely aware of the weight suddenly placed on his shoulders. I'm willing to participate in any test necessary," he managed, meeting Queen Pryler's gaze. The following weeks were a whirlwind of diplomatic negotiations, scientific studies, and heated debates. Bruce found himself at the center of a political storm, torn between his duty to Earth and his growing feelings for Queen Pryler. As tensions rose, a neutral space station orbiting a nearby planet was established as a meeting ground. Bruce stood at a viewport, staring out at the stars, when he felt a presence beside him. "It's a lot to process, isn't it?" Queen Pryler said softly, her reflection visible in the transparent aluminum. Bruce nodded, turning to face her. "Your Majesty, I have to ask, why me?" Pryler's antenna twitched, a sign Bruce had come to recognize as nervousness. "Because you see beyond our differences," she said. "You've shown courage, compassion, and a willingness to understand our ways. Those qualities are rare and precious." Before Bruce could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. Admiral Koth's voice crackled over the intercom. "Security breach in Sector 7. All personnel to battle stations." Bruce's training kicked in immediately. He grabbed Queen Pryler's hand, pulling her away from the viewport. "We need to get you to safety," he said, already scanning for the nearest secure area. They raced through the station's corridors, the sounds of weapons fire growing closer. As they rounded a corner, they found themselves face to face with a group of heavily armed Gamelon extremists. "Death to the human lovers!" one of them snarled, raising his weapon. Bruce reacted instinctively, pushing Queen Pryler behind him and diving for cover. He snatched up a fallen Gamelon weapon, its alien design familiar from his recent training. "Stay down!" he shouted to Prylar as he returned fire, his shots precise and effective. Queen Prylar, however, was not content to remain idle. She tapped a control panel on her wrist, activating a personal shield. "I will not cower while others fight for our future," she declared, her voice steel. Together, they fought their way through the station, Bruce's combat skills complementing Prylar's knowledge of Gamelon technology. They made a formidable team, slowly pushing back against the attackers. In a moment of chaos, Bruce saw one of the extremists take aim at Queen Prylar. Without hesitation, he threw himself in front of her. The energy blast caught him in the shoulder, sending him spinning to the ground. "Bruce!" Prylar cried out, her usual composure shattered. She knelt beside him, her hands pressing against the wound to stem the flow of red blood. As Bruce's vision swam, he looked up at Queen Prylar. The sight of her silver eyes filled with concern, framed by the flashing emergency lights, etched itself into his memory. In that moment, any doubts he had about their proposed union vanished. "I'm okay," he managed, struggling to sit up. "We need to keep moving." Prylar helped him to his feet, her touch lingering longer than necessary. "You saved my life," she said softly. "You do the same for me," Bruce replied, meeting her gaze. As reinforcements arrived and the attack was repelled, the shared danger served to strengthen the bond between humans and Gamelons. The bravery displayed by both species in the face of a common enemy convinced many skeptics of the value of the proposed alliance. In the aftermath, as Bruce recovered in the medical bay, Queen Prylar rarely left his side. Their conversations, once focused on diplomacy and cultural exchange, took on a more personal tone. "In human culture," Bruce asked, his voice still weak from his injury, "how would you describe what we're feeling?" Prylar's antennae swayed gently as she considered the question. "I believe," she said carefully, "that humans would call it love." Bruce reached out, taking her hand in his. The contrast of his pale skin against her blue was striking, yet it felt right. "I think they would," he agreed. As news of their heroics spread, public opinion on both sides began to shift in favor of the alliance and the proposed royal marriage. Even some of the more conservative factions began to see the strategic advantages of such a union. Plans for a formal ceremony to ratify the Human-Gamelon Alliance Treaty were set in motion. Teams from both species worked tirelessly to create a wedding ceremony that would honor both human and Gamelon traditions. Yet as the date approached, new challenges emerged. Questions about the long-term implications of human-Gamelon interbreeding arose, and concerns about cultural preservation on both sides came to the forefront. Bruce and Queen Prylar found themselves at the center of a galactic debate, their personal relationships scrutinized by billions. As they prepared for their roles as the symbolic bridge between two vastly different civilizations, they knew that their greatest challenges still lay ahead. One evening, as they stood together on the observation deck of the space station, watching the stars, Bruce turned to Prylar. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, gesturing to the vast expanse of space before them. Queen Prylar's antennae twitched with commitment. "Together," she said, intertwining her fingers with his, "I believe we're ready for anything." "Anything?" Her silver eyes gleamed with perseverance as she gazed out at the stars. Bruce squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth of her blue skin against his. "Together," he echoed, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. As they stood there, contemplating their shared future, neither could have anticipated the whirlwind of events that would unfold in the coming days. The space station buzzed with activity as the day of the Alliance Treaty ratification and royal wedding approached. Humans and Gamelons moved through the corridors, their conversations a mix of excitement and nervous energy. Decorations adorned the walls, a blend of Earth's vibrant colors and Gamelon's more austere aesthetic. Bruce adjusted his collar, the unfamiliar weight of his ceremonial uniform, a constant reminder of the gravity of the situation. He caught his reflection in a nearby panel, the human diplomat now adorned with Gamelon royal insignia. The sight was still jarring. Queen Prylar entered their shared quarters, her antennae twitching with barely held back emotion. "The delegates from Earth have just arrived," she announced, her voice a mix of relief and apprehension. Bruce nodded, moving to her side. And the Gamelon High Council? Already here and growing more impatient by the minute, Pryler sighed. This alliance hangs by a thread, Bruce. We must not fail. He took her hands in his, marveling at how natural the gesture had become. We won't, he assured her. What we're doing here is bigger than any one person or species. It's about the future of both our civilizations. The eve of the ceremony arrived with an air of solemnity. In a private chamber, Bruce and Pryler prepared for a ritual that would blend their cultures in the most intimate way possible. Dr. Alara, the Gamelon scientist overseeing the procedure, approached with two ornate vials. Your Majesties, she began, her voice betraying a hint of awe, are you ready to proceed with the blood exchange? Bruce nodded, extending his arm. As the needle pierced his skin, he watched his red blood flow into the vial. Beside him, Pryler did the same, her blue blood a stark contrast. As they exchanged the vials, their eyes locked. Bruce felt the weight of history in that moment. Two species, once at odds, now joining in the most fundamental way. Dr. Alara's gasp broke the silence. She stared at her instruments, disbelief etched across her features. This is unprecedented, she murmured. What is it? Pryler asked, her antennae quivering with concern. The scientist looked up, her eyes wide. Your blood samples, they're showing an unexpected level of compatibility at the cellular level. This could mean that we could potentially reproduce? Bruce finished, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Alara nodded, her excitement palpable. We'll need to conduct further tests, of course, but the implications are enormous. This could be the key to truly uniting our species. As dawn broke on the day of the ceremony, Bruce and Pryler stood before a window, watching the stars. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Suddenly, Admiral Koth burst into the room, his face grave. Your Majesties, we've received an urgent message from Earth. Long-range sensors have detected an unknown fleet approaching the Milky Way. It's massive, unlike anything we've ever seen. Bruce felt his heart race. How long do we have? Hours at most, Koth replied grimly. Pryler's antenna flattened against her head, a sign of deep concern. We must accelerate the ceremony, she declared. The alliance must be formalized before this threat arrives. Bruce nodded in agreement. Alert both delegations. We'll proceed immediately. The grand hall of the space station, meticulously prepared for a leisurely ceremony, now thrummed with urgency. Delegates from both species filed in, confusion and fear evident on their faces. As Bruce and Pryler took their positions, the officiant, a respected figure from both cultures, began the proceedings. The ceremony was a blur of ancient rites and modern pledges, the weight of two civilizations' futures hanging on every word. Just as they exchanged their final vows, a tremor ran through the station. Admiral Koth's voice crackled over the intercom. Unknown vessels have entered the solar system. They're hailing us. Bruce and Pryler shared a look of willpower. Without a word, they turned and raced towards the command center, their ceremonial attire streaming behind them. As they entered, the main view screen flickered to life. The image that appeared left everyone in stunned silence. The beings before them were unlike anything they had ever encountered, ethereal, almost luminous, with features that seemed to blend aspects of countless species. Greetings, children of Earth and Gamelon, the lead figure spoke, its voice resonating in their minds rather than their ears. We are the progenitors, the seeders of life in this galaxy. We have returned to evaluate your progress. Bruce stepped forward, his hand instinctively finding Pryler's. We welcome you, he began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. I am Bruce of Earth, and this is Queen Pryler of Gamelon. We stand before you as representatives of a newly formed alliance between our peoples. The progenitor's gaze seemed to pierce through them. An unexpected development, it mused. Show us the worth of this alliance. Prove to us that you are ready to join the greater galactic community. As Bruce and Pryler began to speak, weaving a tale of cooperation, adaptability, and shared vision, they felt the weight of countless lives resting on their words. The future of both their species hung in the balance, with the progenitors as their judges. Little did they know that this encounter would be just the beginning of a journey that would reshape the very fabric of their existence, testing their bond in ways they could never have imagined.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.